Dr. Rose here again. I want to talk to you about transactional leadership, particularly systems and the way organizations tend to work. The particular elements of any system determine the processes and outcomes. So the idea is if I went to an iPad factory, I wouldn't see tires coming out of the end of the conveyor belt. Why not? Because it's an iPad factory. It was designed to produce iPads. Well, a lot of organizations, the systems that are in place are designed to actually produce error. In the last video I talked about theory X and theory Y, again management assumptions, theory X believing that employees are lazy and perhaps even stupid and that they need to be coerced and prodded to get things done, where theory Y assumes that hey, if we design the systems correctly, if we equip people, if we believe the best about them and encourage them, then they're going to do great things. And so that's going to come into play in this model I'm going to show you in a moment. In this model here, what you have are, again, going back to values, effectiveness is a value and efficiency is a value. They're not necessarily mutually exclusive, but you have a tendency to see them on opposite ends of a spectrum. And on the other part of this model, you have simple investigations. Again, I'm using investigations for the example here, and complex investigations. So the idea here is that if my primary value is effectiveness and I'm dealing with a complex investigation, then it would go in this category here. And I'll give you, for instance, a homicide investigation. Of course, the California Penal Code for homicide is 187. So if I'm doing a homicide investigation, we have a goal of effectiveness. We know it's complex. We know we need to slow things down, get the resources out there, and handle that. On a simple traffic citation, people don't want to be delayed too long. It's a simple investigation. We have a value of efficiency, get them out of there as quickly as possible. So that would fall within this quadrant here. Of course, we have a variety of other calls for service, such as traffic collisions, and of course, depending on whether it's a non-injury or a fatal, that could land anywhere from here all the way into the effective and complex. I mentioned before the concept of normative and empirical. Again, normative is what should be, empirical is what is. Critical distinctions that you need to make in terms of when you're observing something. And so the idea in our domestic violence investigations, if we were talking about public value, intent of the legislature, intent of policy and procedure, then a domestic violence investigation should, again normatively, what should be handled here. We want to be effective. We want to make sure that the victim is getting the resources that they need, that we're getting the evidence that we need to build a good case, and of course there's a degree of complexity there. However, empirically, how it's actually carried out, at least in my organization, is we take some pictures of the victim, we get a statement from the victim, a statement from the suspect, make an arrest, and we move on. Well, of course, that kind of behavior puts us down here into the simple and efficient. Again, if you're looking at values, the officers are valuing efficiency. I would imagine the public would, especially the victim in this case, be valuing effectiveness more so. So the idea is, well, why does this occur? And again, the system is designed to produce the outcomes that it wants. However, you tend to have unintended consequences as well. So the question is, why is this occurring? If you go back to 1938, a gentleman named Chester Barnard, he conceived of organizations as a formal organization, a formal side, and an informal side. The formal side, of course, is policy, procedure, the written rules and regulations, the formal ways of saying that, hey, here's how we do business here. And of course, in law enforcement, there's policies and procedures on domestic violence. The informal side of the organization is really defined by peer acceptance, how we do things around here. So I'm going to show you how both the formal organization and the informal organization inadvertently are telling people in that organization that efficiency is a defining value. Now, the policies and procedures that are written don't say, hey, hurry up. However, there's communications in the organization that says, hurry up, primarily through email and through briefings. One of the things that are put out there on a regular basis is response times. And the idea is that we in law enforcement want to keep response times low. The problem with that is that if I'm communicating to the employees that response times need to stay low, what am I telling them to do? I'm telling them to hurry up. And I also have to examine what is the primary function of keeping response times low. Well, duh, it's staffing. And I don't think the deputies have any power to increase staffing on any given shift. Therefore, the question is, well, why am I telling them this? Well, again, it's to tell them to hurry up. Now, will the formal organization say, yeah, I want you to hurry up? No, they're not going to say that. So you're going to have conflicting signals. But the fact that they get those emails on a regular basis saying, here's the response times, keep them down, of course, they're going to hurry up. The other thing that they put out on a regular basis on the formal side of the organization is the late report writing list. And so the idea is to stay off that list. If you want to get promoted, if you want to get a special assignment, or even be seen in a positive light, stay off the late report list. So if I'm on a domestic violence call and normatively I want to be effective, Well, then I need to get a more detailed statement from the victim. I need to go into the history of domestic violence. I need to talk to the kids, the neighbors, the relatives, co-workers, pull financial records, pull medical records. There's a whole plethora of things that we can do to be effective. However, if I stop too soon, I can be efficient. But if I want to do a more effective investigation, then I'm going to have to talk to the neighbors and all these people. So if I'm talking to these people, then what do I have to do in my report? I have to write more. Does that take more time or less time? Obviously it takes a lot more. So if I want to stay off the late report list, what do? I'm not talking to the neighbors, I'm not talking to the kids, I'm not pulling medical records, and as long as the sergeant signs off my report that has a he said, she said, and some photographs, I'm going to keep doing that. So that's the formal organization. On the informal side, peer acceptance in law enforcement in many organizations is, hey, clear the board, which means the computer system that has all the calls for service pending, make those calls disappear as fast as possible. And don't make one of your peers come into your assigned area and clean up your mess. So if you're getting behind on calls, they're going to give negative feedback on a daily basis of, hey, hurry up, why are you milking that call? Why is it taking you so long? So you're going to see that both sides, the formal and the informal organization, are basically telling people on a regular basis, hurry up. Now here's the problem with that. If you go into any given situation and you have a variety of decisions that you can make, and you can imagine decision-making parameters being wide, with no limitations whatsoever, then wow, there's a whole lot of things that I can do. And I'll give you kind of a crazy example of this. Imagine that there's no values, there's no, other than efficiency, no restrictions, no moral codes, no laws, nothing that says that'll control your behavior. And your problem is that you have a riot that you need to get rid of. If efficiency is your only value, what's the quickest way to get rid of a riot? Kill everybody. Of course, we have moral, legal, social constraints that said, no, you can't do that. But there's a variety of things I can do within here. And that's represented simply by a line with some parameters there. So the idea is that when I'm operating in a system like this, where I'm being told to hurry up, well, a lot of the things on the efficient side or the effective side of the house are getting eliminated. So my decision-making parameters shrink significantly. And anything that occurs outside of this little box here is automatically eliminated. Now going back to that environmental model that you have the individual in the center, the peer group, the supervisors, all the way on down to the public, well, the public would, I would imagine, say, hey, I want an effective investigation here and you're operating here. Well, here's what keeps this system going. We measure success by the absence of problems, conflict, controversy, complaints, and as long as nobody's complaining, we'll keep doing this. Especially when the system is saying, do this. So in any given situation, the right approach may be here, it may be here, it may be here. But again, the system's allowed to continue because there's no feedback coming back into the system. But here's what happens. The employee is basically making decisions that they think they're supposed to be making because they're getting positive feedback from the formal and informal organization, but then somebody does decide to complain. Of course, when we have a complaint, what do? Well, what does policy tell us? It says we do a personnel investigation. Okay, great. And for short, we call it a PERS. Well, we do the investigation, and do we compare the decisions that the employee made to what the system told them to do, or do we compare it to what the policy says they need to do? Of course, we're going to go back to the books and what policy says. So we say that, hey, policy says your decision should have been here, your decision was actually here, you were wrong, therefore we're going to discipline you. Well, here's the problem. Once I discipline this employee, what do I put them? Right back into the same system that produced that decision in the first place. So the employee is confused. Okay, I'm sorry. You're telling me to do this, this, and this. I did it. Now you're punishing me for doing it. Now what do I do? Because I'm still operating in the same system. Well, then the person that is managing the system, one, has to understand the system for what it is. Two, make the changes in the system to naturally produce the outcomes that you want. So we need to move the value of efficiency, push it up towards effectiveness. Well, how do you do that and where do you start? Well, you don't start with the peer group. Theory X says, hey, all the problems that are happening, your fault. It's taking a step back and taking it from perspective of theory Y, it's not the individual's fault in many cases, it's the system's fault. So how do I correct the system? First thing I need to do is design my system to be efficient. And in our system, we have computer systems that are not integrated. Somebody calls dispatch, the dispatcher is putting the name, address, phone number, dates, times, reporting districts, all that information that is required to go in our reports. Well, that system does not talk to the report writing system. So the deputy has to go in and manually enter that information. Every single report form manually again. So we have a naturally inefficient system. So if we simply integrate the systems, we can naturally produce efficiency, which will allow us to move towards effectiveness. We can change our report writing policies. We can change the way we do online reporting. There's a lot of mechanisms in place where we can move from efficiency to effectiveness. Once that starts from the formal side of the organization, then we can start influencing the peer group to start redefining peer acceptance, not in terms of efficiency, but in terms of effectiveness. It's a systemic issue. And the idea is, the common thing is to, again, blame the individual, have no understanding of how this system is actually working, because I can guarantee you that most managers in law enforcement aren't conceiving of the system in this way. And because of that, especially in a command and control paramilitary type organization, it's the individual's fault. We have high standards. We're going to hold you accountable. Okay. Are you going to hold the system accountable for that? So the idea is, once I do this, move towards effectiveness, the system is now expanding those parameters where they're supposed to be that align with public value, and we have much better outcomes. We have less Theory X behavior. We have employees that are showing that their motivations, which they already had when they came into the organization, are going to come to fruition by doing better investigations. Again, any questions, email me or call me. Thank you.